Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are. My name is Anna Rochelle, and today we are in Course 1, Chapter 8, Day 2. We are going to solve these one-step addition and subtraction equations. Fear not, multiplication and division will be in the next video. So you're not going to miss out on any of these different operations that we have here. Okay, before we get started, we're definitely going to go ahead and test some solutions. Now, when we test solutions, it's going to be a little bit basic, a little bit beyond a early elementary schooler's abilities, but definitely beneath a middle schooler's abilities, mainly because we are looking here at, can we replace a letter with a number? And what do I mean by that? Remember in a previous video, we were talking about solving different types of expressions. So we were evaluating those expressions, and we would replace a letter with a number so we could actually do this math, right? So we would replace this x with the number 3. We would do 2 plus 3 equals 5. And hey, 5 does indeed equal 5. So then yes, this is a true statement. And then yes, this solution is definitely an option in this equation. Sometimes, however, it won't work. So for example, we have x equals 3 for this equation. We're going to replace this x with 3. And we're going to do 6 minus 3 equals 1. Well, in fact, I know that 6 minus 3 is actually 3. And so 3 does not equal 1. And since it doesn't equal 1, we're just going to write, no, this is not a solution. Let's try some over here. So essentially, we're always going to replace the variable with whatever number we're given, right? So we're going to do 4 times 2. Does that really equal 4? This is kind of like my question mark. Like, is that really a thing? In fact, this is not a thing because I know 4 times 2 is 8. That doesn't equal 4. So my answer for this would be no. Here I have x is 29, so I'm going to replace x with 29. So I have 29 minus 7. And then I know that 29 minus 7 is 22, so 22 does equal 22. So hurrah! It is, and we have our answer for yes and no for 1 and 2, or I guess no and yes for problems 1 and 2. I would like for you to attempt 3 and 4 before you go ahead and take a look at the answer. In this case, definitely pause your video so that you don't hear my answer, and then unpause me when you are ready. So 63 over 7 is in fact 9. So yes, this is a solution. And then 6 times 8 is indeed 48. And so that does equal 48. And so yes, this is a solution as well. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. And part 2 is the vocabulary. This is what's going to help us really understand how to solve an equation with addition or subtraction. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is our addition property of equality. Now, when we take a look at the addition property of equality, we are essentially adding the same amount to both sides of the equal sign. So you should have space in your notes to write down the actual definition. In here, the addition property of equality is I am adding something. So I am giving something to both sides of my equation. And last time we talked about how an equation could be something like x plus 3 equals 6. So I would add something to both sides of this equal side. Like I would add, let's say 1 and add 1. And this would be addition property of equality because adding 1 would happen on 2 different sides of the equal sign. So the next thing that you have is actually subtraction property of equality. And if we take a look at subtraction property of equality, it's pretty much the same exact definition. The only difference is that here it's I'm at, oops, that's a little bit little. Here I am adding the same amount. Here I'm going to subtract the same amount. And again, this is addition property of equality, subtraction property of equality, right? So it's a little bit different, but essentially I am adding or subtracting the same amount from both sides of the equal sign. So instead of having this, x plus 3 equals 6, and I'm adding 1 to both sides of the equal sign. Let's say I have x plus 3 equals 6, and I'm subtracting 1 from both sides of the equal sign. My equal sign is here. I have a subtraction on either side. Sometimes I've seen teachers kind of divide these equations on the equal sign, and they just kind of like draw this straight line down the middle of that equal sign to separate, to visually separate. I have found in the past that it's been helpful for most students. So definitely use it if you need to, and I'll show you how that works when we actually do solve an equation in our next slide. But speaking of how are we going to solve an equation in our next slide, one of the things that I do want to make sure that we pay attention to is this inverse operations. So the way that we are going to solve an equation is we are going to use these inverse operations. And an inverse operation is essentially an opposite operation. Inverse is opposite. So when I look at an operation like addition, right? So generally when I think of addition, I think I'm getting more, right? And so the opposite of addition, of getting more, is getting less, or subtracting, right? So my opposite for addition is subtraction, and my opposite for subtraction is addition, right? So we know that these are opposite operations. They give me the opposite of the desired effect, right? The same thing goes for multiplication and division, right? Multiplication and division have this inverse operation. They are opposites of each other as well. So usually if you know what, so let's say 2 times 7 is, you probably know what 14 divided by 7 is as well. All right, let's go ahead and let's try some problems and how this inverse operations is going to affect our properties of equality. So I see right here I have subtraction. I know the opposite of subtraction is addition, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 9, but I'm not just going to add 9 to one side of the equal sign. I'm going to add 9 to both sides of the equal sign. In this particular case, what I'm doing with this plus 9 minus 9 is I'm creating what's called a zero pair. It's a pair of numbers, okay? So this is a zero pair. It is a pair of numbers that creates the desired effect of 0. So in this case, on the left-hand side of my equal sign, I'm going to be left with x, right, plus 0, but that doesn't really need to be anything. It doesn't need to be stated. And then x is going to equal 32. And that would be my final answer. So let's take a look at problem 2. So here I have x plus 16. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide my equation into 2 equal parts. So I know that when I'm ready for my property of equality, I'll do the same thing to both sides. So when I have addition, my opposite operation, my inverse operation is going to be subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 16, create this 0 pair. And not only am I going to subtract 16 from one side of the equation, I am going to subtract 16 from the other side of the equation and end up with x equals 8. Now, there's a couple of things that, well, one main thing that I do want to point out to you. As you are working on pre-algebra, as you are working on this middle school math level, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to look at your teacher, or you're going to look at me and you're going to say through the video, they're dumb. No, I don't want to show this work. Well, I know. In fact, I'm pretty certain the next problem, every single one of you knows that it's 17 plus 10, that's 27. In fact, most of you probably don't even need to do any of that math on this screen. However, when you're looking at pre-algebra and the purpose of pre-algebra, you're looking for the ability to help you be successful in an algebra class. And in order for you to be successful in this Algebra 1 class or in any higher level math class, you need to be able to understand what is happening and why it is happening. And even though you don't necessarily show your work, it's going to be totally fine as you get into an older grade level, as you get into a deeper level of thinking and a deeper level of math. So the purpose of you showing your work for problems like this is not quite so that you can be punished. Instead, it's to really help you prepare and really put you in this good mindset and really put you in a kind of like muscle memory work, right? So for example, when I see this for a sixth grader, I don't necessarily need all of this work to be shown, but I definitely need to know that you know that this is an inverse operation of addition and subtraction. And I definitely need to know that you know that it's going to be subtracting 10 from both sides of the equal sign. So that's really it. That's all I want. However, if this information helps you, if breaking it up into 2 equal parts helps you, then definitely, definitely, definitely keep up the good work and definitely do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to pause this video so that you can try 4, 5, and 6 on your own. And then when we come back, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explain to you what 4, 5, and 6 are. Definitely pause this video, otherwise you'll get all the answers right away, and I know that's not what you want. So one of the things that I do want to mention about problem 4 is that problem 4 is not a typical problem for course 1, but I think it's super important to note, and I think it's super important to understand and review a little bit about different properties. So in an earlier video, we talked about commutative property and associative property and distributive property. So right now, our goal is to take a look and think back to what commutative property is. If you don't recall, please definitely look back in your notes on our expressions, algebraic expressions unit. Commutative property is the ability to add not in the same order. So for example, I can do 3 plus 4, but I can also do 4 plus 3 and still end up with that same answer. In this particular case, I have 32 plus x and x plus 32, right? X plus 32 is the same thing as 32 plus x because commutative property applies to addition. So if this kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, or if it does make you feel uncomfortable where you have the letter second and the number first, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with this 32, where is this coming from? What is happening? What you can do is you can use commutative property, and then you'll see like, hey, I'm adding 32, so the opposite operation, the inverse operation would be subtracting 32. And you'll see you'll end up with that same answer of 24, okay? All right, that is all for day 2, where we add and subtract these equations, where we solve these addition and subtraction equations. In the next video, we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing equations. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.